The clock struck 3 a.m. when Robert Morgan, CEO of one of Chicago's largest construction companies, heard the sobbing echoing through the marble corridors of his $15 million mansion. He found them huddled together on the cold floor. Michael, 6, and Sarah, 4, trembling in their silk pajamas, tears streaming down their faces like broken faucets. "Daddy, we can't sleep again," Michael whispered, his small voice cracking. This was the 4th night this week. The 6th nanny had quit yesterday, claiming his children were impossible to handle. Robert knelt down, his $3,000 suit wrinkling against the Italian marble, feeling more helpless than he'd ever felt closing million-dollar deals. "Why can't you sleep, sweetheart?" he asked Sarah. She looked up with eyes that seemed far too old for a 4-year-old. "Because we're scared you'll disappear like Mommy did." What happened next would change everything this powerful man thought he knew about family, sacrifice, and the people he'd never truly seen. While Robert's mansion remained sleepless, across the city in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment, Maria Santos was ironing her cleaning uniform at 3:30 a.m. Her 3 children, Carlos, 8, Isabella, 6, and little Pedro, 3, slept peacefully on a single mattress in the living room. She'd given them the only bedroom 2 years ago, when her husband Miguel died in a construction accident. The irony wasn't lost on her. Miguel had died building luxury condos for people like the man whose office she'd be cleaning in 2 hours. Maria folded the uniform carefully. Tomorrow would be her first day at Morgan Construction. After 7 months of unemployment, this job was her lifeline. The agency had warned her, "Mr. Morgan demands perfection. He's fired 3 cleaning crews this year." She looked at her sleeping children and whispered a prayer in Spanish. Isabella stirred, calling out, "Mami?" in her sleep. "I'm here, mi amor," Maria whispered back, gently stroking her daughter's hair. At exactly 4:45 a.m., Maria kissed each child's forehead and slipped out into the Chicago winter. The bus ride would take an hour and 15 minutes. She carried a small bag with her PhD diploma from São Paulo University, a constant reminder of the life that once was. In the reflection of the bus window, she practiced her introduction. "Good morning, Mr. Morgan. I'm Maria, your new cleaning lady." What she couldn't know was that fate was about to collide 2 desperate worlds in the most unexpected way. Morgan Construction's gleaming headquarters stood like a glass monument to success. Maria arrived at 5 a.m. sharp, her hands already chapped from the cold. The security guard barely looked up as she showed her ID. "Service elevators on the left, 40th floor." The elevator ride felt like ascending to another planet. When the doors opened to the executive floor, Maria stepped into a world of mahogany panels and crystal chandeliers that cost more than she'd earned in 5 years. Robert's corner office was a testament to power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, awards lining the walls, and a desk larger than her apartment's kitchen table. But it was the mess that caught her attention. Coffee rings stained important documents. Empty takeout containers cluttered the conference table. The wastebasket overflowed with crumpled papers. This wasn't just neglect. This was chaos, born from a man drowning in his own success. Maria began working methodically, treating each surface with the same care she used to handle archaeological artifacts during her research days in Brazil. She organized the scattered documents chronologically, wiped down every surface twice, and arranged the desk accessories with mathematical precision. At 7:30 a.m. she heard the elevator ding. Heavy footsteps approached. Robert Morgan burst through the office doors, phone pressed to his ear, his face twisted in frustration. "Find me someone who can handle my kids tonight or you're fired," he barked into the phone. He stopped mid-sentence when he noticed his office. Everything was pristine, organized, and somehow peaceful. His eyes found Maria, who was quietly watering the neglected plant by the window. For a moment, their worlds intersected in perfect silence. Robert stared at his office transformation, momentarily forgetting his phone call crisis. "Excuse me," he said, ending the call abruptly. "Did you organize my contracts?" Maria nodded nervously. "I hope that's okay, Mr. Morgan. I arranged them by date and priority. The red folders contain urgent signatures needed today." He picked up a document. She'd somehow deciphered his chaotic filing system and improved it. How did you know these were urgent? The letterhead, sir. Goldman Sachs and City Planning Commission don't usually wait. Robert's phone exploded with calls again. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Mr. Morgan, the Henderson Nanny Agency says they're blacklisting you. No one will work for your family anymore. He slumped into his chair, suddenly looking older than his 42 years. God damn it. I have the Millennium Tower presentation tonight, the biggest deal of my career. Maria continued dusting quietly, but she heard everything. The desperation in his voice reminded her of her own struggles. I can't cancel, Robert muttered to himself, but I can't leave Michael and Sarah alone again. They haven't slept properly in weeks. The silence stretched between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Mr. Morgan, Maria spoke softly, setting down her cleaning cloth. I have experience with children. He looked up sharply. You? Yes, sir. I could watch them tonight if you need. Robert's first instinct was to laugh. This cleaning lady, probably barely spoke English, wanted to watch his traumatized children? But desperation makes people consider impossible options. Do you have references? Experience, training? Maria hesitated. How could she explain that she'd spent 5 years researching child psychology, that she'd written her dissertation on childhood trauma recovery? I raised 3 children on my own, Mr. Morgan. They're well-behaved and happy. Something in her voice, calm, confident, maternal, made him pause. But there was something Maria wasn't telling him, something that would soon turn his entire world upside down. Robert studied Maria's face, searching for signs of competence he'd never bothered to look for in a cleaning lady before. You don't understand, he said, loosening his tie. My children aren't normal kids. They scream, they throw things, they refuse to sleep. 6 professional nannies quit. These women had degrees from prestigious institutions. Maria's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. If only he knew about her own degrees, her research, her expertise. Sometimes children act out because they're trying to communicate something adults aren't hearing, she said carefully. Robert scoffed. They're communicating plenty, loudly. Mr. Morgan, children who lose their mother often develop sleep disorders and behavioral issues as coping mechanisms. It's not defiance, it's survival. The words hit Robert like a physical blow. How did this woman understand what expensive therapists had failed to grasp? You speak very good English for a... He caught himself before finishing the sentence. For a what, Mr. Morgan? Maria's voice remained steady, but her eyes flashed with something he'd never seen in an employee before. Dignity. The uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Look, Robert finally said, I'll pay you double your daily rate. 1 night, 8 p.m. to midnight. If they're asleep when I return, maybe we can discuss a permanent arrangement. Maria needed that money desperately. Her rent was 3 days overdue, and Pedro needed new shoes for winter. I accept, Mr. Morgan. As she gathered her cleaning supplies, Robert called after her. Maria, why do you care so much about helping? She turned back, her expression soft but determined. Because someone once helped me when I had nothing left to lose. What Robert didn't know was that Maria's help would reveal truths about his family, his prejudices and himself, that would shatter everything he thought he understood about what truly mattered. That evening, Maria stood before the Morgan mansion's imposing oak doors, her hands trembling slightly as she pressed the brass doorbell. The chimes echoed through what sounded like a cathedral. Robert answered, straightening his black tie attire. They're in the living room. There's frozen pizza in the freezer, emergency numbers on the refrigerator. If they get completely out of control, call me immediately. He paused at the threshold. Maria, I'm trusting you with the most important things in my life. Don't make me regret this. The moment the door closed behind him, Maria heard it, the sound of complete chaos erupting from the living room. She found Michael and Sarah in the middle of what could only be described as a war zone. Couch cushions flew through the air, toys scattered like shrapnel, and both children were screaming at volumes that seemed impossible for such small bodies. I want Daddy! Sarah shrieked, hurling a stuffed elephant across the room. "Go away, ugly lady," Michael added, kicking over a basket of books. Maria stood perfectly still in the doorway, observing. Other nannies would have immediately tried to impose control, to demand silence through authority. But Maria saw what they had missed. These weren't tantruming children. These were grieving souls expressing pain the only way they knew how. She slowly sat down on the floor amidst the chaos, cross-legged, calm as a meditation master. The unexpected reaction confused the children. Their screaming gradually subsided as curiosity overtook rage. "Why aren't you yelling at us?" Michael asked suspiciously, still clutching a toy car as a potential weapon. Maria smiled gently. "Because you're not bad children. You're sad children. And sad children need understanding, not punishment." For the first time in months, the Morgan mansion fell completely silent. But what happened next would reveal a connection that would change all their lives forever. Sarah took tentative steps toward Maria, her tear-stained cheeks glistening in the lamplight. "Are you really not going to shout?" she whispered, her voice tiny and fragile. "Never," Maria replied, patting the carpet beside her. "Would you like to know a secret?" Both children exchanged glances. Secrets were currency in their world of adult mysteries and whispered conversations they weren't supposed to understand. Michael lowered his toy car weapon. "What secret?" Maria's voice became soft, conspiratorial. "I have 3 children at home, and sometimes they can't sleep either. Do you know why?" Sarah shook her head, creeping closer. "Because they miss their daddy very much. He went to heaven 2 years ago, and sometimes the missing feels so big it fills up their whole chest until there's no room for anything else." The words hung in the air like a bridge between 2 broken worlds. "Our mummy went to heaven too," Michael said quietly, finally sitting down. "Daddy says she got sick and couldn't get better." "That must make your heart feel very heavy," Maria nodded. "Like carrying invisible rocks everywhere you go." Sarah crawled into Maria's lap without asking permission. "Does the missing ever stop hurting?" "It changes," Maria said honestly, stroking Sarah's hair. "It becomes softer, like a warm blanket instead of sharp glass. And sometimes, when you help other people who are missing someone too, it helps the hurt become smaller." "Is that why you're being nice to us?" Michael asked, his 6-year-old skepticism still intact. "Partly. But also because I can see something special in both of you that maybe other people missed." "What do you see?" Sarah asked, looking up with eyes that suddenly seemed hopeful instead of haunted. Maria smiled mysteriously. "I see 2 children who love their daddy so much they're afraid to sleep because they think he might disappear like Mommy did. But I also see 2 children who are incredibly smart, incredibly kind, and incredibly brave." "We're not brave," Michael protested. "We cry all the time. Crying when you're sad is the bravest thing in the world," Maria said firmly. "It means you're strong enough to feel your feelings instead of hiding them." For the next hour, Maria told them stories about her own children's bedtime rituals, about how they created a special prayer for their father every night, and how they learned that love doesn't disappear when people go to heaven. It just changes shape. By 9 o'clock, both children were curled against Maria like sleeping kittens, breathing peacefully for the first time in weeks. What Maria didn't know was that Robert had returned early and was standing in the hallway, watching through the crack in the door, his heart breaking and healing simultaneously as he witnessed something he'd never seen before. His children finding peace in the arms of a woman he'd almost dismissed as insignificant. The next morning, Robert discovered something that stopped him cold in his tracks. On the kitchen counter, Michael and Sarah's homework lay spread out in perfect organization, but it wasn't just completed. It was transformed. Michael's math problems, which usually looked like a battlefield of erased numbers and frustrated scribbles, were solved with elegant precision. But more than that, each problem included little drawings that illustrated the concepts. 10 apples divided by 2 children, with smiling faces on each apple. Sarah's reading worksheet wasn't just filled out. It contained elaborate sentences that demonstrated vocabulary far beyond her grade level. Words like magnificent and extraordinary were used correctly in context, but it was the French phrases written in the margins that made Robert's hands shake. "Bonjour, papa. J'espère que tu as une belle journée. "Hello, Daddy, I hope you have a beautiful day." His children didn't know French. Hell, he barely remembered his high school Spanish. When Maria arrived for her regular cleaning duties, Robert cornered her immediately. "Who helped my children with their homework last night?" he demanded, spreading the papers across his desk like evidence in a criminal case. Maria glanced at the work, her expression carefully neutral. "They're very intelligent children, Mr. Morgan. They just needed someone to believe in their capabilities." But the French, the advanced vocabulary, Michael was struggling with basic addition last week. "Children often perform better when they feel emotionally secure," Maria replied, continuing to dust his bookshelf with methodical precision. Robert grabbed her arm gently but firmly. "Maria, look at me. Where did you learn to teach like this?" Her hesitation lasted only a second, but it was enough to confirm his growing suspicion that nothing about this woman was what it seemed. "I watch a lot of educational videos online," she said finally. "YouTube has excellent tutorials for helping children with learning difficulties." "YouTube?" Robert's voice rose an octave. "YouTube doesn't teach you how to identify and correct specific learning patterns. YouTube doesn't give you the ability to assess a child's emotional needs and adapt teaching methods accordingly." Maria's cleaning cloth trembled slightly in her hands. "Mr. Morgan, I really should finish." "No." His voice was firm but not unkind. "My children slept through the night for the first time in months. Their homework is suddenly graduate-level quality. And you're telling me you learned this from internet videos?" The silence stretched between them like a tightrope, both afraid to cross it but unable to back away. "Sometimes," Maria said quietly, "the most important education happens in places you'd never think to look." But Robert was already reaching for his laptop, determined to uncover the truth about the mysterious woman who had somehow accomplished what 6 professional nannies and 3 expensive therapists had failed to achieve. What he was about to discover would shatter every assumption he'd ever made about success, education, and the invisible people who moved through his privileged world. Robert's fingers flew across the keyboard as he pulled up Maria's employment file. Standard background check, basic references, address verification. Nothing unusual for a cleaning position. But something nagged at him. The way she'd explained learning patterns. The sophisticated vocabulary she'd used without thinking. The intuitive understanding of child psychology that had escaped trained professionals. He typed Maria Santos into LinkedIn. Nothing. Facebook search yielded only a basic profile with pictures of 3 smiling children. Then he remembered the formal way she'd written her name on the employment application, Maria Santos, Ph.D. Most people would have assumed the Ph.D. was a mistake, maybe confusion with formatting. But Robert was meticulous about details in his business. It's what made him successful. He searched university databases, starting with local institutions. Nothing at Northwestern. Nothing at University of Chicago, nothing at DePaul. Then, on a whim, he expanded his search internationally. Dr. Maria Santos, Universidade de São Paulo, Brazil. The screen filled with results that made his coffee cup slip from nerveless fingers. Doctoral dissertation, Neuroplasticity and Trauma Recovery in Children. Age 3 to 8. A longitudinal study of post-loss behavioral adaptation strategies. Published research, the correlation between maternal attachment security and academic performance in grieving children. Academic Achievement Award, Outstanding Contribution to Child Psychology Research 2019. Teaching position, Associate Professor of Developmental Psychology 2018 to 2021. Robert scrolled through page after page of academic achievements, research publications, and conference presentations. This wasn't just someone with a degree. This was someone who had dedicated her entire career to understanding exactly the problems his children were facing. The woman who cleaned his toilets was one of Brazil's leading experts on childhood trauma and cognitive development. His hands shook as he printed everything. 23 pages of academic excellence, research grants and peer reviews that painted a picture of a brilliant mind disguised as invisible labor. But the final document was what broke him completely. A newspaper obituary from São Paulo, dated 2 years ago. Dr. Miguel Santos, respected construction engineer, killed in workplace accident, survived by wife Dr. Maria Santos and 3 children. The construction company named in the article was a subsidiary of Morgan Construction's international division. Robert stared at the screen until the words blurred together. His company had killed her husband. The brilliant woman who had saved his children was cleaning his office because his business decisions had destroyed her life, and she had never said a word. The intercom crackled. "Mr. Morgan, Mrs. Santos is here for her afternoon shift." For the first time in his adult life, Robert Morgan had absolutely no idea what to say. Maria entered Robert's office to find him standing with his back to the door, staring out at Lake Michigan. 23 printed pages lay scattered across his desk like fallen leaves. She recognized her own doctoral headshot, staring back at her from the top page. "Dr. Maria Santos," Robert said, without turning around. "Associate Professor of Developmental Psychology, Specialist in Childhood Trauma Recovery, Published Researcher, Academic Award winner." Maria's cleaning supplies slipped from her hands, the crash echoing through the silence. "You know," she whispered. Robert finally turned, his face a mask of emotions she couldn't read. "I know that Miguel Santos worked for Constructora del Sol. I know that Constructora del Sol is a subsidiary of Morgan Construction International. I know that he died because of faulty safety protocols that my company implemented to cut costs." The words hit Maria like physical blows. She gripped the back of a chair to keep from falling. "I know," Robert continued, his voice cracking, "that I'm responsible for making you a widow, for forcing you to leave Brazil, for reducing one of South America's most respected child psychologists to cleaning my goddamn office." "Stop." Maria's voice was barely audible. "No, I won't stop." "Do you know what the worst part is?" Robert's composure finally shattered. "You saved my children. You gave them peace, understanding, love, things I couldn't provide with all my money and connections. And you did it, while I treated you like you were invisible." Maria straightened, finding strength in the truth finally being spoken. "I never blamed you personally, Mr. Morgan." "Why not?" he exploded. "I would have. How can you stand there? How can you look at me without hatred?" "Because hatred would poison my children's hearts," Maria replied firmly. "Because Miguel wouldn't want me to carry that darkness. Because anger won't bring him back or change what happened. But working as a cleaning lady, you're brilliant. You could be teaching, researching, making a difference." "I am making a difference," Maria interrupted. "Every day. With your children, with my children, with every family I help. My doctorate doesn't make me better than this work, Mr. Morgan, but this work doesn't make me less than my education either." Robert sank into his chair, overwhelmed. "How do I fix this? How do I make this right?" Maria moved closer, her voice gentle but unwavering. "You don't fix it by trying to erase the past. You fix it by choosing who you want to be moving forward. What you're about to hear will show you that sometimes the greatest lessons come from the people we've hurt the most." The question hanging between them was no longer about employment or education or social status. It was about whether a man who had everything could learn to see the world through the eyes of someone who had lost it all and found strength in the breaking. The silence stretched between them like a canyon, deep and seemingly impossible to cross. Robert's entire worldview was crumbling in real time. Every assumption about success, worth, and intelligence was being rewritten by the woman standing calmly before him. "I could give you your old life back," he said desperately. "I have connections at Northwestern University of Chicago. I could make calls, pull strings. You could be Dr. Santos again instead of—" "Instead of what?" Maria's voice carried a gentle challenge. "Instead of Maria who takes care of your children? Instead of Maria who makes sure your office runs smoothly? Instead of Maria who does honest work with dignity?" Robert flinched as if she'd slapped him. "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it?" She stepped closer, not aggressively, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing left to lose. "Mr. Morgan, for 2 years I've watched you walk past janitors, security guards, cafeteria workers, and maintenance staff like they're invisible. Do you know their names, their stories, their dreams? This is different. No, it's not. Maria's voice remained steady. The only difference is that you discovered I have letters after my name. Yesterday I was just the cleaning lady. Today I'm Dr. Santos because my suffering finally became visible to you. Robert felt something fundamental shifting inside his chest, like tectonic plates realigning. You're right. God help me. You're absolutely right. I don't need you to save me from this work, Maria continued. I need you to understand that every person who serves you, who cleans for you, who guards your building, who prepares your food, they all have stories. They all have worth. They all deserve to be seen. But your education, your expertise, doesn't disappear when I clean toilets, doesn't become less valuable when I fold laundry. Knowledge isn't diminished by the hands that carry it, Mr. Morgan. Robert stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Then what do you want from me? How do I live with knowing what I know? You live with it by changing. Not just for me, but for everyone whose humanity you've overlooked. The weight of her words settled over him like lead. I don't know how to do that. Yes, you do. Maria's voice softened. You've already started. When you let me help your children, when you trusted someone you'd written off, when you chose to dig deeper instead of staying comfortable in your assumptions. Robert turned back to face her, and for the first time he truly saw her. Not as an employee, not as a problem to solve, not as a story to pity, but as a complete human being whose strength had been forged in fires he couldn't imagine surviving. Will you help me? He asked quietly. Will you teach me how to see people the way you do? Maria smiled, the first genuine smile she'd given him since that first night with his children. I've been trying to teach you that since the day I started working here, Mr. Morgan. The question is, are you finally ready to learn? The weight of Maria's question hung in the air like a challenge to his very soul. Robert had built his empire on quick decisions, calculated risks, and unwavering confidence. But this moment required something he'd never developed, the courage to admit he'd been fundamentally wrong about how he viewed the world. I want to learn, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. But I need you to understand something first. He moved to his desk, pulling out a thick folder marked Constructora del Sol, Safety Review. After Miguel died, I ordered a complete investigation. What I found... His hands trembled as he opened the file. The safety protocols I approved to cut costs weren't just negligent, they were criminal. 12 other workers were injured that month using the same faulty equipment. Maria's breath caught. This was information she'd never had access to, details that had been buried in corporate bureaucracy. I shut down that entire operation, Robert continued, fired the oversight team, implemented new safety standards that cost the company $40 million, but it was too late for Miguel. Too late for your family. Why are you telling me this? Maria asked, though her voice remained steady. Because if you're going to teach me to be a better person, you deserve to know exactly who you're working with. I'm not just someone who overlooked your worth. I'm someone whose decisions killed your husband. The brutal honesty hung between them like a blade. Maria closed her eyes, taking a deep breath that seemed to draw strength from some invisible source. When she opened them, Robert saw something that shattered him completely. Not hatred, not revenge, but a deep, profound sadness mixed with something that looked impossibly like forgiveness. Robert, she said, using his first name for the first time, do you think Miguel would want me to spend the rest of my life hating you? Yes, he answered immediately. I would. That's the difference between us, Maria said gently. Miguel taught me that carrying hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It doesn't hurt you. It destroys me. Robert sank into his chair, overwhelmed. How do you do it? How do you not hate me? Because hate won't bring him back. Because my children need a mother who chooses love over bitterness. Because some battles are won by refusing to fight them. She paused, looking directly into his eyes. And because the man who made those terrible decisions isn't the same man who's asking to learn how to do better. People can change, Robert, but only if they're willing to face the full truth of who they've been. I want to change, Robert said, his voice breaking. Help me become someone Miguel would have respected. 3 months later, the Morgan construction headquarters looked the same from the outside, but everything within had fundamentally shifted. Robert no longer walked past employees without acknowledgement. He knew that James, the night security guard, was studying for his nursing degree, that Rosa in the cafeteria sent money to her elderly parents in Guatemala, that David, the maintenance supervisor, had served 3 tours in Afghanistan and struggled with PTSD. But the most visible change was the new position created specifically for Maria, Director of Employee Wellness and Family Support. Her office, located on the executive floor next to Robert's, had become a sanctuary for employees facing personal crises. The walls were lined with children's drawings, thank you letters, and certificates from the workshops she conducted on work-life balance, grief counseling, and cross-cultural communication. Mrs. Santos. A soft knock interrupted her review of the company's new parental leave policy. "Do you have a moment?" Jennifer, a young project manager, stood in the doorway with red-rimmed eyes. "Of course, please sit." Maria gestured to the comfortable chairs she'd arranged around a small table, deliberately avoiding the intimidating desk setup that dominated most executive offices. "My mother was just diagnosed with Alzheimer's," Jennifer began, her voice cracking. "I need to move back to Ohio to care for her, but I can't afford to lose this job. I don't know what to do." 6 months ago, Jennifer would have been told to submit a formal request through HR and hope for the best. Today, Maria reached across the table and gently squeezed her hand. "Let's figure this out together. Have you heard about our new remote work program? And the company has partnerships with elder care facilities that might help with your mother's treatment." As they talked through solutions, Robert appeared in the doorway. Instead of the interruption Jennifer expected, he listened quietly, then added, "Jennifer, take all the time you need. Your job will be here when you're ready." After Jennifer left with a comprehensive support plan and tears of relief, Robert settled into the chair across from Maria. "That's the 14th employee this month who came to you instead of traditional HR," he observed. "People need to feel seen before they can feel supported," Maria replied. "HR processes cases. I help human beings." "The board questioned the expense of your position at first," Robert admitted. "They don't question it anymore. Employee satisfaction is up 30%. Turnover is at an all-time low. Productivity has increased despite the new benefits we've added." "Treating people with dignity isn't a business strategy, Robert. It's basic humanity. The improved metrics are just a side effect." Robert nodded, still amazed by how much he'd learned from this woman he'd once dismissed. "Michael and Sarah want to know if you'll come to dinner Sunday," he said. "They're planning to cook for you." "They're cooking?" Maria laughed. "Should I bring a fire extinguisher?" "Probably, but they insist they want to take care of you for once." As Maria gathered her things, Robert realized that somewhere in the process of learning to see others, he'd discovered something unexpected: the difference between being successful and being significant. Sunday dinner at the Morgan mansion had evolved into something Miguel would have recognized, but Robert never could have imagined 6 months earlier. The formal dining room, once used only for business entertaining, now hosted a weekly gathering that had become the heart of an unlikely extended family. Michael and Sarah had indeed cooked, with significant supervision from Maria's children, who had become regular fixtures in the house. Carlos, now 9, had appointed himself head chef, directing operations with the seriousness of a 5-star restaurant manager. "Isabella, the salad needs more lime," he instructed his sister with authority, "and Pedro, stop eating the cheese before it goes on the pizza." Robert watched from the kitchen doorway, marveling at the chaos that somehow felt more peaceful than any silence his house had ever contained. "Papa," Sarah tugged at his sleeve, using the Spanish word Maria's children had taught her, "can you help us set the table? We want to use the fancy dishes." The fancy dishes had once been reserved for impressing business associates. Now they held homemade pizzas crafted by small hands and served with pride that couldn't be bought at any price. During dinner, the conversation flowed seamlessly between English, Spanish, and the mixture both languages had created in their unique household. "Mrs. Santos," Michael announced solemnly, "we decided something important." Maria raised an eyebrow. "Oh, what's that?" We want to learn Portuguese too so we can talk to Grandma Santos when she visits next month. The fork slipped from Maria's hand. Robert had arranged for her mother to fly from São Paulo, a surprise that had reduced Maria to tears when he'd presented the plane tickets. And, Sarah added excitedly, we want to help Daddy build houses for families like Carlos and Isabella and Pedro used to live in before they came here. Robert's throat tightened. The children had been listening, absorbing, understanding far more than any adult had given them credit for. That's actually not a bad idea, he said carefully. What kind of houses do you think we should build? The children's enthusiastic responses filled the room. Houses with big kitchens for family dinners, playgrounds in every neighborhood, libraries where kids could do homework, even if their parents worked late. Later, as Maria helped clear the dishes, Robert found himself washing alongside her, something that would have been unthinkable in his previous life. "For you know what I realized today," he said, scrubbing a pizza pan with unusual attention to detail. "What's that? Miguel didn't just leave behind a widow and 3 children. He left behind a woman who carries his values into everything she touches, including my family." Maria paused in her drying. "He would have liked you, Robert, the person you're becoming. How can you be so sure? Because you love your children enough to change for them." That's the kind of man Miguel was, always growing, always becoming better for the people he loved. As the evening wound down and Maria prepared to take her children home, Michael and Sarah clung to her legs in their nightly ritual. "Do we have to wait until next Sunday?" Sarah asked plaintively. "You'll see me Tuesday for homework help," Maria reminded them. "Promise you won't disappear like Mommy did," Michael whispered, the old fear still surfacing sometimes. "I promise," Maria said firmly. "We're family now, and family doesn't disappear." Robert watched this exchange with the growing realization that transformation wasn't a destination, it was a daily choice to see the world through more loving eyes. 2 years later, the Maria Santos Community Center stands as a testament to what happens when privilege meets purpose. The gleaming facility serves 500 immigrant families monthly, offering everything from English classes to job training, childcare to mental health counseling. The walls are covered with success stories written in dozens of languages, but the real magic happens in the small moments. Robert teaching construction skills to fathers who remind him of Miguel. Maria conducting parenting workshops where executives sit beside housekeepers, all learning together. Michael and Sarah, now bilingual and bicultural, translating for new families and proving that children heal fastest when they help others heal. The center's motto, etched in marble at the entrance, reads, "Everyone has a story worth knowing, a skill worth sharing, a heart worth loving." Dr. Maria Santos Morgan, she kept her maiden name and added his as a bridge between worlds, now directs the center full-time. Robert funds it not as charity, but as the most profitable investment he's ever made in human potential. And Miguel's children have learned that their father's legacy isn't defined by how he died, but by how his love continues to transform lives through their mother's unbreakable spirit. This story proves that the people we overlook often carry the wisdom we need most. Hit subscribe and like if you believe everyone deserves to be truly seen.